personally, I'd be more in favor of looking to the BLM. I mean, this is a nice deal here as far as it looks pretty and whatnot, but as far as the practicality of it, I just don't see it. I mean, you know, it doesn't seem like there's a bunch of input from the other, the auditor, the planning department, et cetera. I just don't see how all those people are gonna fit with the moves that's put into this place. And we had a big discussion not that many months ago on putting an elevator over there and moving all that stuff, and we already kind of decided that was gonna be cost prohibitive and everything else, and now it seems like we're coming back to it again, and I just don't see any great big changes in it. And so I'm much more inclined to not waste my time on this here and pursue more of the BLM and get some more input from the department heads, et cetera.
And that is the fundamental decision.
Yeah.
If
we're gonna,
do we go down that road with the courthouse or not? The fact is, it's got issues right now with some of the space that we're occupying. That if we were to just leave things the way they are, there's some issues that need to be addressed, and most of those are the expensive issues that are identified here.
We didn't even talk about the restrooms and upgrading anything here and the costs.
well, that's in the
Yeah,
cost,
we'll
that's
do
in,
it.
that's in the tenant improvement cost. Not upgrades in West,
That's part of the 100 square foot.
oh, yeah, yeah,
Or 75.
or 75, yeah. 75 to 100, yes, yes,
That's a good.
yes.
I was respectfully disappointed in this.
Do you have a
report.
question on this?
Yes, I do. This plan submitted today by the CAO and Mr. Lenya is basically is narrow in scope and considers only the accommodations of the Board of Supervisors and county staff. Accommodations for the public's convenience does not seem to have been considered. Presently, county services are spread all over the county, which he addresses. We ask that in your efforts to make the county more efficient, that services provided daily for the public be inserted into your plan. These 3 county services are the most used by the public and need convenient access. They should be housed in a ground floor location with adequate parking and be ADA compliant. With proper planning, the 17,000 square foot BLM building could accomplish this. And the 3 are outlined there for moving. The 3 that are listed here would be county clerk, county recorder, tax collector, and county assessor. These are things that are visited by the public every day. And 4,600 square foot of the 17,000 would be for them. 7,000 square feet, which is indicated in the report, would be for Board of Supervisors boardroom, supervisor's offices, all of county administration, which includes personnel, the auditor, because they do payroll for you, clerk of the board, county council. The third to move into that building would be planning department, code enforcement, public works. These are all identified as public, goes to them every day. And we, as the public, should be considered for convenience before you or any county employee is. This big move, this big efficiency is for us. I mean, when I first moved here, I was running all over. I was running all over the place, and they said, "Oh no, you have to go over to Nevada Street. No, you have to go over to Root Street." And that has not changed in this county to this day. And we need to move. In our opinion, we'd like to submit that the BLM, if you choose to purchase it or lease it, consider moving these 3 categories into that building. And it's 1 story, no elevator, easy access, lots of parking. I just was over there just a few minutes ago. And the sheriff's department and district attorney, public defender, and the child services, health and human services, they have their own funding sources, and a lot of them have their own buildings. And the public doesn't need access to these every day. So, just for consideration, this is our 2 cents worth, that you consider us first when you start spending money and moving things around. I know you sort of agreed with me before I came up here that why are you spending all this money on this historic courthouse? I'm not going to go into my feelings about what you should do with the historic courthouse, but it seems like this assessment has maybe come from input from the Chapman's committee. Is some of that in this report? Did you incorporate some
I'm
of?
not sure what you're referring to, Chad.
Well, he has his little historic committee, and for the use of that building,
As far as I know, they haven't met, and I know they have not provided any input to our process.
that was my question, is has any of his input gone into this? Because moving these departments that you've mentioned here makes no sense. I mean, I know you don't want to hear it, Bob,
No,
but
it's not.
it doesn't make any sense.
We do
this
have the
report.
time factor, you've had 5 minutes, and thank you for your input. Mr. Mannion, you continue. Any more
We're ready for
questions?
any other questions?
We do have other things to talk about, and we are limited until 3 o'clock. More questions?
I would just say we did, heavily weight the need to locate, or the desire to locate the district attorney, public defender, and child support services near the new Hall of Justice, because, for obvious reasons.
That was a primary
You got enough questions?
I have one other question.
Oh, sure.
On your parking, that says the board of supervisors should mandate that property adjacent to courthouse square be acquired as it becomes available. What, is that, are we getting excited?
Where are you, Aaron?
Okay.
It's under the parking on the last.
Parking on page 6.
There's always been a need for parking around Courthouse Square. That's been forever, it seems like. And,
So the mandate's a pretty strong word.
well, I should have used a different word. I agree, it is too strong. We suggest to the Board of Supervisors that they consider acquiring property for parking, but I think your first step would be to go ahead and provide some on-site parking where the 69 jail was.
Okay.
It's plain from the departure of the courts to the new Hall of Justice that the demands on parking in the historic courthouse are significantly less.
Yeah.
You can find parking places most every day of the week.
Okay, well, then maybe it's not an issue.
Well, current, but I think it's, the parking situation now is better, and that's largely due to the fact that big parts of those buildings are unoccupied.
Occupied.
So-
I will change the wording of Supervisor, you're correct.
There's one, Supervisor Chapman isn't here, but he called me today and told me that on page 2, he, and I think we can take it out, did not like the sentence there that says resolve not to construct additional structures on Courthouse Square to preserve the remaining historical integrity of the site. He didn't like the idea of precluding that as an option.
I agree.
So I think that's a good observation.
Okay.
Okay. Any more direction? I'm back to Mr. Anderson, I see you, I'm back there.
Yes, you did.
I just had a couple comments. Of course, the board will figure out the best location for everybody, but in terms of this study, I think it would be probably a good idea for Public Works and the Planning Department to get together with the consultant and go over the numbers, because we're not really seeing the same numbers adding up for our space needs. My department occupies over 5,000 square feet right now, not including public works, and it's proposed that we move into admin building and occupy about the same space that my department does right now together. And I'm sure that square footage is all there if you include the lower floor. But I would want to kind of talk about how we're going to lay people out, because managing people on different floors can be a challenge, and I'd want to know how that would work. And then also, another comment would be that there would need to be some construction of a public assistance counter, and I would want the board to be aware of whatever cost that might add to the proposed project. So those are my comments.
Now, there will be, as we have it written right now, there's an extra 5,000 square feet still unoccupied in there. So I think there's room. I don't think that's an issue. I think the question of where we put you. Yeah, both floors.
Right.
Right, we're leaving IT in there, obviously. But yeah, there's room. It's just a question of how we locate you in there. And we do know that you're gonna want a reception area at whichever level which would probably be the upper level.
Okay, any more comments? Thank you, everybody, for your information on it, and I guess you have adequate direction.
I don't know about that, but I'll do something.
Well, I hope you do. And I think, Rich, as we move forward with this, I mean, I see
Go a long way off.
somewhat of a value to this year, but I really think you need to focus, keep this going at the same time as looking to BLM. I'd be more inclined to focus on spending more energy on the BLM than I would just.
And towards moving the court-related functions down there.
Yeah, I mean, whatever else you fit down there accordingly, if you get a layout, deal with how we can,
Okay? Thank you, Mr. Munyon.
My pleasure.
So our next, capital improvement plan.
You just,
So, Mr. Chairman, I apologize, I have a hearing with the administrative law judge in 15 minutes.
I will allow that. That's good.
In the county's best interest. Sir.
Mr. Heimbigner's been
Peter, you're going.
working on a draft plan, and again, this is the first draft, because we want to solicit predominantly public and board input in development of this plan, and so we don't want to get too far out in front of any input that we might receive. So this is kind of the first outline of what we plan to do. A lot of it was taken from a plan that Ms. Hodge gave us a copy of, and there were similar ones around the country as far as the format goes, and Peter has taken it and put some things in it, and I'll let him go through that.
Yeah, there's kind of a basic format for these capital improvement plans together, as Mr. Egan stated, that Ms. Hodge had provided one, and that was actually an excerpt from a book that was done in '96 by a national accounting agency. There's other examples out there on the internet you can get, but they follow a similar pattern of laying it out. And then from there, I went and looked at some different plans that other counties and cities have done in the state of California. And try not to reinvent the wheel. If I found something that looked pretty good, I kind of took that and stuck it in here to kind of get a rough outline to work with and go forward from. So essentially, I'll just kind of go through here real quick and give you a general breakdown of the outline of what it's doing. Have an executive summary there on page 2. And as you can see, there's places where I have question marks and other text in there that needs additional information as we go forward with this plan of development. But that just kind of gives you one approach you can do of kind of explaining how the plan is put together and what its intent is in that portion. On that, it's like the summary there. Next page is a glossary of terms. I thought that was pretty helpful because I was looking at this not only from the perspective of folks, staff that deal with the financial parts of the county on a regular basis, but also something that the public could help wrap their head around, and that's also what they hope to do with the executive summary as well. So there's just kind of some of the definitions that would be thrown around probably fairly frequently going through a plan or what we're trying to do there. Example, there's what an appropriation is, capital outlay, an asset, the differences there and stuff. Again, that can be added to, amended, and so forth on that. The next portion was administrative policies and procedures. I didn't really throw a lot in here. I think that's maybe some more internal staff discussions and so forth, come up with something there. I just kind of put a general statement there just to kind of give a little bit of an idea of where that can go from there. Because then you get on to page 5, you get into the kind of specific policy areas. And basically what these would be would probably stuff that we already currently do. It'd just be putting in writing or more clarifying or even referencing another policy we have existing as you go through those. Then there's the financial plan, which is kind of getting into taking the nuts and bolts of it, and what is your available revenue, what are the projects that you need to tackle and everything. So that then falls into our next one is the project categories, which we kind of have a rough one of that, which is that spreadsheet that we've had presented previously at the board with the various buildings and grounds projects. But what you would do with those, typically most places will have at least a minimum of what they call a briefing sheet or whatever, one-page summary of the project, where the funding sources are, whether there's any funding available. It's going to have a ranking criteria, which we'll get into next as we go through this. And kind of project categories that kind of summarizing some of the other plans out there that I suggest here are go through what's approved and underway, studies that may lead to projects, major maintenance items, and then renovate, major maintenance, and I try to kind of a little bit of a definition of what that would consist of there. Like for major maintenance for this building would be your HVAC stuff, updating that and so forth. Then renovations and improvements, that's probably more like what we were just talking about with the space needs. Renovation improvement definitely with the going on at the courthouse if that's undertaken. New construction purchase, again, that's getting into what we're possibly doing with the BLM building. IT, or information technology infrastructure. I know there's some comments, I believe, made previous on that. I looked at some other plans. They do include that, but they include it on the level of something that's going to be a county-wide or a department-wide deployed type system that benefits multiple departments, etc. there. And that stuff can get very expensive, but I think having that in here is probably worthwhile to look at and know that number, especially going forward, because that stuff is always upgrades. And then get down to kind of the nitty-gritty of the project stuff is evaluation criteria for projects. I put in here 2 samples. They're similar, but I thought they had a lot of good information as far as how you would look at a project. And next steps, that would be one of the things I think we should focus on going forward is getting this really dialed in, have the ranking or the scoring, how we want to develop and what we're going to use to do that. One of the things I thought was, which we kind of touched on here previously with Mr. Munyon, the sample 1 in the first paragraph talks about a building evaluation report, which we're kind of doing with the needs assessment or as far as the space needs. But this gets more into what Mr. Hammond's touched on as far as the utility costs, but this would capture not just utility costs, but other upgrades or, doing a cost benefit of, is it worth retrofitting the building or is it worth getting out of the building and, going forward with the new or some other option there. So, and I think that's kind of something we're going hand in hand, I think, with their space needs as well. So, we kind of know certain buildings are probably when you need to do this. Roosevelt one's probably one of those. It doesn't meet the needs of the staff in the current one. But as far as putting, really having some objective analysis to make good decisions, financial decisions. And not just financially, but also the needs of staff and public as well. So that's gets to that, and you see there's a whole host of ways you can look at the criteria for looking at projects. Typically, I'd say almost 90% of the plans that I've looked at usually have public health and safety or other required mandates as one of the primary weighted ways of looking at how important the project is. On that, and then after that, it's kind of, you get to different things. Is it something that addresses an existing plan, or it's a capital impact, etc. On that, and then the last part, which would be your capital projects, which we kind of have that list put together, but then there's different ways you can do having projects submitted. I mean, I think we already know really quite a laundry list of projects we need to look at right now. But you can develop ways to have projects submitted by different departments and evaluate those as well. There's a process you can develop on that too. But as far as next steps, I suggested that we kind of work on a criteria ranking system and maybe forming a small internal staff committee to kind of work on that. And from there, we can maybe reach out to some of the departments and get a little bit of input there and come out with some stuff. There's some different thresholds in here as far as what's the length of this plan. The average length, it seemed like, was about 5 years. Some of them went out to 10. Some of them were a couple years, a little bit shorter or whatever. It's just how far do you want to look into the future, what you're on the horizon. And then what's the level of what is a capital improvement project? What's the threshold level you want to set that at? I think I have a note in here, the range I'd seen was $25,000 to $100,000 on that. And so there's some different things that we can look at. And again, this is going to be, even the plan, somebody at the county that's had this in place for many years, it's something that's always changing. It's going to be updated yearly. To address, needs going forward and everything. So it's not a static type document. I think just to get the framework down and establishing some guidelines that we can work with going forward and then moving on it. So
If we could stop there for just a minute and get some input from the board. I guess my recommendation would be to make the plan a 5-year plan, not any longer than that. At this point, I don't think that we can forecast that well past 5 years, and if we're going to update it annually or every other year, then I think that would be adequate. And I also think in terms of defining what a capital improvement is, I think somewhere in the $50,000 to $75,000 range and a 10-year life or more is probably appropriate given our circumstances, but open to discussion on that and just want to get some input from the board.
So with your dollar sign, Richard, is that the minimum? Or is that
Well, what it would mean is that anything that's got land for equipment that has a useful life of 10 years or more, that costs over that dollar amount. I'm suggesting 50,000 would be defined as a capital improvement.
Richard, it seems to me like both this capital improvement plan and the space planning document, everything hinges on that BLM building, which way we can go with this stuff.
Or building something like that, someplace to house a big component. Yes.
Well, that's our best shot, that BLM building, and I suggest that we pursue that sooner rather than later. we get on that right away. That's just this board members.
Well, but, and also, Tom, there's a bunch more capital improvement needs besides
Right.
just stuff. So you got your
Right.
airports, you've got your parking lots, you've got your
Yeah.
veterans buildings, a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
You're right, as far as the county offices, everything.
Hinges on what we do there.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as like getting out of the Roosevelt building, which is a monstrosity, I'm sure. It is just a money pit.
Is there an historical perspective of Roosevelt School? Yeah, I don't know, I'm just.
Sure, it has some historical value, but
So
I'm
does
not
the
sure
pool.
it costs.
So does the pool.
Do we have a question from the public?
I thought we were having a discussion.
A question, discussion, whatever,
Okay, thank you.
whatever you feel free to.
You know I'm gonna do it. This, I think we're still on the CIP. In 2012 and 2000, you can check. No. In 2012 and 2013 grand jury report, and that's going on 2 to 3 years ago. And this is it'll end up a question. The grand jury report stated that Sheriff Gordon indicated was that the central control system, which is obsolete and needs to be replaced. However, funding is not available at this time. There is, funding available for this. I talked with Sheriff Gordon this morning, and he said it's really not about funding anymore, but it's a matter of defining the scope of work. It's a very complicated piece of machinery to replace, as you all know. And my question is, dealing with the CIP in its present form, where would something that the grand jury is stated needs to be done, would that, something like this, take priority in the capital improvement plan as far as projects? Because after 2 or 3 years, it seems to have really just fallen between the cracks, and there's no, even though it's an important thing, it seems like it should be number 1 on the list of getting this done. If defining the scope of work is all we need, this should have been done years ago. I remember distinctly the presentation Minu made, Deputy Sheriff Minu made. Minot?
No,
No.
I'm not sure myself.
John Minot is undersheriff.
Undersheriff made, really left an impression on me because of the consequences of it going down. And so, do we have, or are you thinking about grand jury remarks about, and this would be a capital improvement issue, would it be in there?
I don't know that we're using the grand jury report to make a capital improvement plan. My guess is no, but as far as the control system goes, the sheriff's department, we have discussed that at budget committee meetings, and we are looking for funding to do that.
Okay, but
That'll
Sheriff
be a
Grodin
bu-
said funding,
That will be a budget item.
even if the money was there, you gave them all the money to replace it, there's a problem because they have not been able to define the scope of work. So is that, it's like saying, I want to build a house, I have all the money to build a house, but I don't know what I want. I don't know what it looks like.
Part, Richard, isn't it they're trying to land somebody in the facilities that are conjoined into the,
Well, they're working on developing the scope of work for replacing those. And that-
Right.
My last conversation with Minot and Sheriff Grodin were that a facility over on, I want to say one of the coastal counties had recently done it. They were going to try to utilize information they could gain from their request for proposals to develop specifications for replacing.
But are you holding this back because you haven't yet, in 3 years, provided funding in the budget for it? Because I don't see it in the budget.
No, it was in last year's budget, and it will be in this next year's recommended budget.
We are in detail discussing in budget committee, several meetings, John has been there, and we have talked about the control needs to be redone and finding money in this year's budget to do it.
Okay.
Thank you. You?
Is there any more questions on that? I think we're talking about the thresholds.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and there will be priorities. I mean,
Sure.
obviously, if you got 50 projects, 10 are gonna be, we gotta do it today, and there
Yeah.
might be 10 that if we never
Well-
get to, so what?
And let me try to answer the question again. I think, yes, that project would naturally be included in a capital improvements plan, but it's not gonna be held up until we get a capital improvement plan to do it. It's
Right.
gonna be budgeted with or without a finalized capital improvement plan. So
I would
does that
say
answer
it's
your
a high
question?
priority.
Okay, and it looks to be that you're gonna be flexible if somehow we have an earthquake and a building falls down or whatever, you're gonna be able to make that plan mobile to where you can move something that maybe was number 7 to number
It's gotta be
2.
a
Of
living,
course, it's
it's
gotta-
gotta be a living document.
Living document.
Any capital improvement, I mean, I have my own business. I mean, I'm constantly thinking a month away, 6 months away, a year away, 5 years away, 10 years away. And 10 years away is probably not realistic. Because
things
so
change.
many things happen in the economy and the market and all that, it's not practical, but you still have to have it. So, I mean, it's got, living document's a great word, or liquid, I mean, either one. What we set up today, 3 years from now, may be totally different in 3 years.
That's why we're updating.
Hmm?
That's why we want to update it every year.
That's why it needs to be updated every year, correct. Okay, any more questions? You have good direction.
I was expecting a lot more input, but we will
Well,
proceed.
what were you expecting?
Well, I
We
think,
are begging 2 board members.
Well, that's okay, but what were you expecting?
the direction on the definition of what is a capital improvement, duration of the plan, that's good. I think we'll go with 5 years.
And
But
we pretty much
50,000.
agreed with that.
Some of the fundamental decisions, again, you mentioned that they center around finding another place on the other side of town. I still believe that the central decision that needs to be made is, are we gonna use the courthouse as a basic iconic structure of the county? If so, then we need to do some work there. I don't think these things need to be done necessarily in tandem, but there's no reason they can't go on at the same time as far as working on a building over here and
You know, Richard, far as a long range look at it, I say yes. I mean, that's the center of the Lassen County. And it has been for years and it needs to stay that. My first worry about is money. I mean, obviously, to do this, we have to borrow huge amounts of money and put the county in debt. Do we want to do that? So I guess we need
We need all 5.
we need a realistic price and a realistic
Right.
financing plan. And I think, didn't Marty come up with that at one time, Connie?
you
I
came up
remember
with,
some
yes,
financial.
you came up with several items and some estimated costs.
Right, some estimated payments and borrowing, means to borrow capital, some.
It wasn't as broad as this, as far as moving.
Well, at that time, the BLM building wasn't available, so that changes the whole picture.
Right.
That is,
That's a whole different ballgame we're dealing with now.
that is correct. The BLM was not available at that point. But I still think we need to, maintain the courthouse in the center of Lassen County and, I mean, I don't wanna spend $2 million doing it. I think in the long-range plan, that should be the center of administration. That's my feeling.
No, I agree 100%.
I mean, if you
How
don't,
we'll use it, I don't know.
the problem is, Richard, if we don't, eventually it's all gonna fall down worse than it is today.
Right, you only need to look next door to see what it's gonna look like.
I mean, anything you're not using is gonna fall down. If you use it, you're gonna maintain it. And that's true on any business, even at home.
Well, the way I understand our direction is to move forward on all of those fronts as far as
Yep.
working with the people that that own that building, see if we can come up with something amenable there, come up with a better financing plan to do the musical chairs of departments, and the comment is duly noted to get, you know, more input from all the departments. We have received a lot of input, but Maury, for example,
Just,
has some questions.
Sure.
So we can continue on that process and come back when we have all five.
You know, would it be prudent, Richard, if you say, take Maury for an example, and Larry, have them go over there to say the admin building, and Maury say, well, I need this much of the upper, or this much of the lower, whatever, and have Larry, so you can kind of get a space fitting, so they kind of know too, and then you can, and then maybe, whatever department you're
Yeah.
looking at moving, just have them go in there, look and see, if you were to go with the courthouse, what would you be? If you were to go to the annex, what would you be? If you were to go to DLM?
Okay.
Yeah,
I think you can figure that out on plan, so.
well, you would think, but.
We've done some of
And
that, but
these guys
I
aren't
think-
newcomers
I'm sure,
here.
No,
I've been thinking
but you
about
have
that.
an idea.
I think this is probably the point at which we want
They got
to
people.
do that.
Absolutely.
They've been around long.
Forge ahead.
No, but with more than the annex or the courthouse or the, I mean, just.
And, let's forge ahead with this CIP.
What other direction do you need? CIP, you need to get enough direction on that?
I think that's.
I think that's a good starting place for
No,
CIP.
yeah,
I've said that
we'll keep plugging away on
before.
it.
Now it's time to start.
Right. We,
Start putting some meat to that potato.
and I had really hoped to have more public input, because when, you know, we.
Why would the public have input?
Why would they?
Why would they have input? This is a closed issue here. The way you treat people, it's a closed issue. There's such resentment to public input that why would you want, or why would you expect public input?
Well, there seemed to be a lot of interest in, for example, moving the boardroom early on in this year, and I had just hoped that we would have input from the public on how they would like to see the services provided and locations, and we haven't.
You know, I'm a public. I'm the public, and look how I was treated.
How was you treated? Every time you raise your hand, I give you all the time you want. What else can I do? Help me out here. You were treated very professionally, very
I
kindly,
think-
with much respect.
I think when you say that's enough to a
Because-
member of the public,
It is my job to conduct this meeting and keep it moving, and let everybody have a chance, and that I will do. Remember, everybody, not just Ms. Spencer, has that right. We will reconduct the public's business, and we will continue to conduct the public's business. And Mrs. Spencer, you have had every opportunity, anytime, on any agenda item, on public comment to speak almost as long as you want. But when I see a time issue, and that we have to keep everybody moving, and keep the meeting moving, and give everybody a chance, I can't let you speak on and on and on and on. And to say that you're not treated fairly is not appropriate, it's not true. Because you get more time to say anything than anybody. I'm sorry you feel like that, I disagree with you. But please, anytime you want to say something, do as you've always done, raise your hand, and you will get that chance. You've never been denied a time to speak, never.
yeah, I have.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have.
Any more questions?
We're done.
Okay, that's all, Major Jerry.
Thank you, Peter.